But we are, of course, going to be switching gears here. We're going to be jumping into state politics. Our Jenny Ha is on the other side of a story that we are going to play here because we are getting a better understanding of what Democratic candidate for governor Xavier Becerra has planned if he wins the race for governor this November. Affordability, housing are his top priorities, and our News 8 State Matters political reporter Jenny Ha breaks down some of those key points.
In one of his first media gaggles since the June primary election, Becerra addressed a wide range of topics from healthcare to housing affordability and artificial intelligence. In his first media availability since June 9th, Xavier Becerra touched on some of his plans for the Golden State. One of his biggest priorities seems to be affordability. His biggest proposal, Power Hour, a way to give Californians, depending on income and household size, up to 2 hours of free electricity midday daily.
How do I pay for that? Well, it just so happens that today we produce so much solar energy, electricity, that oftentimes in the afternoon, we can't make use of all of it.
The Becerra campaign says a family of 4 earning less than $82,500 a year, for instance, would be eligible. On the state's climate goals, such as to phase out the sale of gas-powered cars by 2035, Becerra says California could maintain its timeline with proper investment.
Can you afford to go with where I want you to go as we transition? And if they tell me, gotta slow down a little bit, I will slow down. Another point on affordability, healthcare amid cuts in federal funding. Becerra has expressed support for a fair share plan, ways in which large employers would contribute to the taxpayer-funded Medi-Cal program should their employees not be paid enough for healthcare. If you're not paying enough for your workers, then maybe that means we have to raise taxes on some of these companies. Again, bigger companies. On housing, Becerra declined to say a specific goal, noting he doesn't want to disappoint anyone.
I could have said 2 million, I could have said 5 million. What I was saying is, it's gonna be something that's realistic. Whatever it will be more realistic.
Becerra says if California streamlines the permitting and construction process, it can double its current building rate.
And people expect to know what their leaders will do. I want to give them something real that they can grasp. So the next time I say I'm going to try to do something, they'll say Becerra can do it.
At an event on Tuesday, Becerra was asked about Republican opponent Steve Hilton's key point, whether nearly 20 years of Democratic rule is to blame for the challenges California faces.
I'm going to have to work with everyone, whether they've got a D or an R behind their name. So at the end of the day, stop complaining. Show us what you're going to do.
And of course, the big question, what will a debate or debates between Becerra and Hilton look like?
We will debate and we will get out there. At least I know I'm going to get out there and talk to California voters and the people. I will go everywhere I can.
And on artificial intelligence, Becerra says he wants to retain that technology and innovation in state while protecting children and jobs, like perhaps by giving the public shares in AI companies, an idea Newsom has supported. Jenny Ha, News 8.
All right, and from one screen to the next, Jenny Ha. Again, you may not be able to see the screen yourself, Jenny, just because obviously the way that we're talking, but it is always so funny. We see you, and then there you are. So thank you so much again for joining us here on yet another Friday. I think we've been sort of waiting with anticipation for a lot of these major points from Becerra coming out of the primary. Obviously believes the front runner. The polling shows him as a front runner. So will he pay close to the vest? Will he unleash some of these ideas? What did you think of the overall rollout, especially being on that stage and how he sort of pitched these ideas?
We've not only been waiting for more concrete campaign proposals, but also as media, we have been waiting for an opportunity to ask him follow-up questions, right? And this after you saw the Politico sign. It's a political publication, and they held a Sacramento political summit in which a lot of political figures like Nancy Pelosi, Senator Adam Schiff, Xavier Becerra, and Steve Hilton were speaking. So after the onstage interview, Becerra held his first media availability, the first one since June 9th. So media finally got a chance to talk to him. And as you heard, one of the biggest kind of campaign promises that he hinted at was this so-called Power Hour. And in my story, you heard how exactly he plans to pay for it, who exactly would be eligible. And so obviously the concrete details remain to be seen, right? Where we have about a little over 2 months until the November election. But I think it was a good chance for politicos, reporters, and also the public to hear a bit more specifics when it comes to Becerra, because we know compared to Steve Hilton, Becerra has has not only had fewer public appearances and media availability, but also he has kind of lagged when it comes to those specific proposals on gas, housing affordability, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, this was something we were waiting for a while. And I think one of the questions that led us to do that is, or one of the reasons why we were asking this question here is because we know that just based off of the state demographics, Becerra has a built-in advantage. I have the most recent polling. I'm going to put it up here on the screen so we have it. This is a Berkeley poll that has Becerra right now at 55% support, Hilton at 37, undecided 7 to 8% there. Taking a look at San Diego specifically, a little less of a gap. You got 50% Becerra, Hilton at 39. If you were to get all of that undecided support, we'd be looking at a 50-50 split here in the city or in the county of San Diego. What I found really interesting about this poll is that among likely supporters for Becerra and likely supporters for Hilton, it showed that among those who are supporting Becerra, a lot of it had to do with not just traditional Democratic policies, but fighting the Trump administration. That was tied for the number one reason. Experienced politician was at a 6% response rate, whereas for the Hilton voters, 28%, this was the second ranking reason, was not part of the California political establishment. I think it is safe to say and safe to assume that that is a sentiment that a lot of Democrats agree with as well. But we don't see it on the polling. That's not something that we're seeing. We don't even have experienced politician. Why do you think that is?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, you look at all these candidates back in the primary, for instance, right? Remember how crowded that Democratic field was before Javier Becerra emerged as the front runner, ultimately advancing with Steve Hilton. Sorry, you can see my tomato blanket in the background here. It gets a little chilly in the newsroom. You saw the more moderate candidates like Katie Porter and Matt Mahan, for example, try to not center their campaign so strictly around the Trump administration. They want it to be a little different than Governor Gavin Newsom, and again, focus more on concrete plans for California, aside from fighting back against the Trump administration. We're going to sue the Trump administration. Whereas Becerra, that's kind of his main campaign strategy now, right? You ask him a tough question, and he says, look at my record. I've done it before. I fought Trump before more than 100 times in court, and I've won, right? So no matter kind of the concrete promises and the issues you are talking about among Democrats, still fighting back against the Trump administration is a significant priority for the Democratic Party. And that ties into the built-in advantage that Democrats naturally have, and thus Javier Becerra has here in California against Republican Steve Hilton. Because also, mind you, remember, no matter how much Steve Hilton tries to distance himself from President Trump and tries to come off as a moderate Republican that can appeal to some of those undecided voters, he has President Trump's endorsement. Yeah. And so Democrats are going to use that over and over again to tie Hilton to President Trump and the MAGA party.
Really quickly before you ask your question, that same poll, among likely Hilton voters, 4% listed Trump endorsement as the top reason.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and that actually leads into my next question, which I'm going to try to succinctly verbalize as best as I can, Jenny, because I do know that I sometimes have a weird rambling question that I ask you that you always do a great job of like finding the main point.
My last one was long. I think I set the bar for you today.
My answers are rambly too, so it's
no.
okay.
No.
So three of us.
I think it's interesting that the Becerra campaign, and this was in the primary as well too, is centering so much on battling the Trump administration. And yes, that's what worked during the primary. But for a large part of the primary, there was the fear that we could have two Republicans, and yes, it was maybe 10, 20% that could happen, that we could have two Republican candidates sort of steal the show in the primary to go to the general, in large part because those Republicans wouldn't be focused on fighting the Trump administration. They would be fighting the status quo of California. Is Javier Becerra, and this is sort of the similar maybe Achilles heel issue that Kamala Harris had when she became the candidate, is he going to propose? I know he's proposed some things, but do you think there might be an opening where he does have to say, hey, look, the system's not working in California right now, and it's more than just fighting Trump. We have to make things better for people here in California. I know he did a little bit of that, but I do think there are some people who are wanting to hear a little bit more on that front.
100%. But at the same time, Kamala Harris and national politics versus Javier Becerra and California politics, no matter how much people want to hear concrete proposals from Becerra and Hilton, I think at the end of the day, it's really, really difficult to imagine a scenario in which all of California decides, a Republican should
Right,
lead the whole
yeah,
state,
for
right?
sure.
So
Right.
again, no matter, let's say, for example, heading into November, you get nothing concrete from Becerra, and you get all the concrete promises from Hilton, and they seem like really doable promises. Still, the likelihood of a Republican being able to represent California is so low. So
Yeah.
we can talk about all this campaign strategy and the what ifs, but I think at the end of the day, the fact that California is such a safely Democratic and blue state
Yeah.
isn't going to change.
I just real quick, yes or no, do you think they actually will debate?
Yes.
Okay. You do think
Yeah.
they will? Okay.
I do think so. I hope so.
Well, yeah, we would love it, but I guess in a way, it almost seems like it would only stand to really hurt Becerra. Just I don't know. Anyways,
But
maybe
that's
not
the
as
point that
many debates, right?
Right, not as many debates, maybe certainly not as many as we saw in the primary, because
Mm-hmm.
again, the pool is so much smaller. There's no need for that, quite frankly. But political analysts were telling me, yes, it would benefit Becerra to not, potentially mess anything up
Right,
by
okay.
choosing to go on a debate stage. But at the same time, even if he does have a few slip ups, it's again, in a state like California, it's really not going to hurt him to the extent that Californians are going to choose a Republican over a Democrat.
Okay.
Perhaps it might be worth it to have a slip up to say
Right.
that, yes, I went on this
Exactly.
debate.
Make
I made those
headlines.
appearances.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Really quickly, before we let you go, we want to talk about the legislative matters that are going on in Sacramento. Of course, Suspense Day was taking place. So we got a lot of bills that made it out of committee, not a lot of conversations, just votes. We know that this is going to be voted on in the chambers looking forward. But I want to ask you about one thing in particular, something that was not voted on, and that has to do with wildfire recovery, the Wildfire Fund. We know that the three major utility companies here in the state have been communicating with lawmakers in Sacramento, trying to ease the burden off of them and put it more on attorneys, etc. That's what a lot of wildfire survivors and communities and organizations supporting them are accusing these utility companies from. We've been waiting to hear something about it. Do we have any update on that as things stand right now?
It's the end of the legislative session right now, so we have about 2 weeks until everything has to be wrapped up. And so over these 2 weeks, we are expecting to hear more concrete details on that. I did get a fact sheet from the governor's office, and that's literally what the governor is hoping to prioritize, what his proposal is. But he still needs to work with the legislature to create a bill or bills to actually get this moving along in the legislature so that senators and assembly members can vote on it, get it to the governor in time for all of this to pass, and then actually create a new state law or amendment on this wildfire utility fund. And so that debate, as you noted, remains to be had. We still haven't seen the details yet. We don't know what the exact timeline is going to look like, but we do know that literally two weeks is kind of that deadline that legislators face. So it's going to be a rushed process. It might be a very quick process. To be very honest, Republicans may criticize this as a not so transparent process because, as we all know, the shorter the time frame, right? Realistically speaking, the less time the public and other legislators and opposition and supporters really have to weigh in on a proposal. So that's how I imagine that debate is going to go down in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Jenny, thank you so much. Hope you have a good weekend. And
You as well.
again, we will see you next Friday, and we will try to cut down on our rambling questions here. But honestly, just love nerding out about all of this. So we really do appreciate the time you spend with us here on this Friday.